Growing up in arcades, I have got a soft spot for pinball machines. The silver ball firing around the playfield, the lights, the sounds. Well, today, my friends, I'm going to take you on a quick journey of me creating my own virtual pinball machine. Some could say I've got such a supple wrist. Maestro, please. So what is virtual pinball? Well, in this case, I'm talking about using freeware called Visual Pinball or Future Pinball, setting up a 4K screen for the playfield and a monitor for the back glass and playing on a full-size pinball machine cabinet. You don't need to play on a cabinet. You can set this up on your computer and play on your monitor, of course, assuming you've got the PC hardware to do so. Is it exactly the same feeling as a real pinball machine? It is not, but it is scary close when it's done right. You can set up haptics to fire solenoids off on the table. When the virtual solenoids get hit, you can set up lights and flashers to add immersion, and you can play hundreds of tables on one cabinet. I, for one, used to own a Twilight Zone. It was my baby, but like all babies, I eventually sold it. That is the way of things. Now, as much as I'd love to have another Twilight Zone pinball machine, I'd also like to have an Addams Family, and a Monster Bash, and AC/DC, and Ghostbusters, and a haunted house, and Deadpool, and well, the list goes on and on. Come with me on a madman's journey to build my virtual pinball cabinet. It all started a couple of months ago. I was spending my usual Saturday evening rocking back and forth in tears in a damp corner of my garage when it occurred to me that perhaps, no, mayhaps, I should see if I can make a visual pinball work. So I quickly rounded up a spare monitor or two and laid it out just like an itty bitty pinball machine. A couple hours later, after some configuration and using my keyboard as inputs, I totally, or totes if you prefer, had a functional pin. I was impressed and immediately began to dream much, much larger. Hauling my TV down to my computer desk, it wasn't long before I realized how cool it looked on the big screen. And so, down the rabbit hole I fell. You see, I'm not new to emulation, as I have built arcade cabinets. My first Miss PacMan cabinet I built when I was like a teenager. Now, don't get me wrong, with some wood and time, I could of course build a cabinet from scratch, but not having a prototype to build off of made that far more intimidating. Plus, things like the rails and the glass and the legs and the coin door, they all add up like crazy. So I decided I would haunt the local classifieds and see if I could find a broken pinball machine that I could buy and use for parts. Patience is not my strong suit. And so other parts started coming in via Amazon, a 4K high response TV, a controller board to wire up the buttons and connect via USB. And like 2 weeks later, the fates looked down on me and smiled. I had found an old pinball cabinet that was well beyond repair, and a couple $100s later, I had a dynamite pinball machine in my basement. Huzzah! That was the hard part, right? I mean, sure, it didn't have a lockdown bar and the legs were rusty like crazy and the coin door was missing all the hardware. But I had a cabinet to put my 43-inch 4K television in. Of course, it didn't fit. Like that was going to stop me. Well, I needed a lockdown bar anyway, the bar that keeps the glass from sliding towards you when you're playing on the pinball machine. And I figured I would modify my pin to that size, the size of the lockdown bar. So I called the local pinball repair shop and asked if they had any wide body glass, which games like Twilight Zone were just slightly wider, but it would fit my TV, and a wide body lockdown bar. With a pause as he went out to check, he confirmed that yes, he did have old versions of both. Seeing as how I had a major struggle ahead of me with the TV not fitting in the cabinet, I thought I would verify that the glass was the same length as the glass that I had, and he assured me that all pinball glass is the same length. It just comes in two widths. That inadvertent lie from him would cause me all kinds of new troubles later. I assure you, as all playfield glass is not the same length. I traded him my glass and went to the next step of my adventure, tearing the cabinet in half. Yes, that's right, I measured down the center of the cabinet and with my oh so many safety standards in place, cut my pinball machine directly in half. Double checking all my measurements, I put a spacer in the front as well as in the bottom and the back. And wouldn't you know it, the Frankenstein cabinet was actually coming along. Let's talk rusty pinball legs now, shall we? As after some reading online, note I said reading and not videos, there is a common consensus that they can be pretty much made to be cleaned up like new. Of course, I had tried your basic cleaners first, and they looked all manners of rough. Coke was suggested, it cleaned off some of the oils and dirt, but the rusty spots still looked super rusty. Plus now the rusty spots were sticky. But the real miracle cure, and you can find this all over, is balled up tinfoil and water. Apparently the reaction is darn near magic. Well, viewers, I was gonna test this out, to not only test it, but to document it with pictures to show how well it worked. The internet is built upon a throne of lies. Again, it cleaned it a little further, and it made some super gross brown water, but the pinball leg still looked all kinds of rough, as did the coin door. Oh, you didn't think I forgot about the coin door, did you? With some wood filler that I was using to fix up the uneven sections of my Franken cabinet, I decided to fill in all the holes of the coin door, and to drill 2 new holes for the coin buttons I had picked up online were gonna go. Lots of work on the cabinet, filling, filing, sanding, and a couple of coats of black paint, and it was coming along really nicely. So time to mount the big TV for the playfield. After looking at a bunch of pictures of other people's cabinets online, I noticed that some people put their monitors flush with the glass on the top of the cabinet. Some recess them down but keep them parallel to the glass, and others run their TV at an angle. So much forum reading and questions were asked, and it seemed like this was based entirely on personal preference. So I dropped it a few inches but kept the TV parallel to the glass and built slides that let me adjust exactly where it sat. Everything looked great, and I loaded up a couple of tables to try them out. Lean in, internet child, and let me share some wisdom with you. I'm 6'1", and it looked really good. I found looking at the back of the screen, the parts of the back glass there were maybe a little bit of extra glare, but it was pretty minimal. However, after playing for a bit, I leaned over the cabinet, which brought me down, and I realized that someone significantly shorter than me would have a much harder time seeing the entire screen, based only on angle of view. Thankfully, nothing about this was easy, so I took apart all my TV mounts, so now it sitting at a little bit of an angle. Now, no matter how tall you are, the playfield looks amazeballs. I gutted the back box and considered keeping the scratched up artwork in case anyone was a collector of dynamite, but seeing as the glass was exactly the right size and I was not keen to have a caricature of Jimmy Walker hanging on my wall, I scraped the paint off. So don't judge me. The original play was to have the bottom monitor drop into the actual pinball cabinet body, but remember when I said not all playfield glass is the same length? Well, it turns out the glass I got went almost to the very back of my cabinet, which only left room for cables to drop from the back box into the cabinet. Much tweaking, wailing, and gnashing of teeth later, I got the monitors to fit inside the back box, but I mean exactly to fit, as they are being held up in crazy ways. Imagine magic and drywall screws. That's kind of what's holding everything in place. Then I marked where the monitor screens were on the front of the glass, flipped the glass over, masked the glass where the screens were, and painted the glass black. Little trick I learned doing arcades, and it looks so good from the front. For those of you shaking your head and wondering what's wrong with me, the answer is oh so much. Anyway, time to drill in some more buttonholes and wire everything up. I wanted to keep it minimal, but I still wanted any game to work. So I've got the 2 flipper buttons, 2 MagnaSave buttons under those, which also work as fire buttons for some games like AC/DC or other games that require a single fire button, and some games you can use it to change songs. Now I decided to use a button for the spring ball shooter, not because you can't get one, well I mean you totally can, but I'm increasing my budget here every time I do something, and I can always change that out later. 2 coin door insert buttons on the door, a start button and an exit button so that I can change the games at any given point. I looked at my pinball and it was almost a thing of beauty. It worked so well and it played fantastic. I decided to wire up some LEDs under the table to give it a cool glow from the bottom. I mounted a soundbar on the back glass and put a subwoofer inside the cabinet, but I also installed a headphone jack under the table at the front, just in case you want to play really quietly. I figured I'd also install a USB hub under the side just for ease of access. My only issue at this point is it looked plain. After all that work, I wanted it to have a little bit of bling. Now looking online, replacement artwork for the sides and front is expensive, and my cabinet's legs are still not bright and shiny. So I had an idea. Let's make this look intentional. An Amazon shipment later, I deckled up the cabinet to look like it's covered in graffiti, and I freaking love it. My next project is adding lights behind the playfield at the top and getting my buttons to all light up and flash as they would when you're playing a pinball machine. What's crazy about all of this is that I would totally do it again. In fact, I want to do it again. And to do it easier. This has been my journey this far, and I am by no means done. I still have a box of solenoids I can install in the cabinet to give it that feedback. I just need a controller for that as well. Shoot, I even reskinned and redesigned a visual pinball table. I converted a Playboy pinball machine and converted it into Sesame Street, music, artwork, and all. There is so much that can be done, but if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, as that's what YouTube uses to decide which videos to recommend to others. This is pretty far off my typical videos, but I thought I would throw this out to the collective internet and see what happens. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if I've brought a smile to your face at any point, it is worth it to me. Thank you so much for watching another Barefoot Gaming video, and I will talk to you again really, really soon. See ya.